Yesterday, Teddy brought Summer and his discoveries to Doc, and Doc did not respond very well. And before he left the hospital, he noticed that there was a jaguar that was having an autopsy on the counter. The problem is that there weren't any jaguars at Fun Jungle. Chapter 8, Black Mamba. There were supposed to be jaguars at Fun Jungle. They should have been on display as of opening day, but their display area, Carnivore Canyon, wasn't finished. It had fallen several months behind schedule during construction. This was because Fun Jungle's designers had mistakenly chosen to carve the canyon into the ground rather than building a fake canyon altogether. Only to discover that the area they'd picked to carve was solid rock. To get through it, they had to use dynamite, but that couldn't be done as quickly as they'd hoped because the explosion spooked some animals and could damage nearby exhibits. The first time the demolition crew had blasted, the tremor had cracked a $10,000 glass wall at Shark Encounter, threatening to release 10 million gallons of water and 6 very hungry sharks on the guests. Shark Encounter had been quickly closed for visitor enhancements, and the demo crew had promised to be more cautious from then on. There had been talk of delaying Fun Jungle's opening until Carnivore Canyon was done, because Carnivore Canyon had lions and tigers in it, and zoo visitors are always disappointed if there aren't lions and tigers. In truth, those animals are usually boring. Lions spend 20 hours a day sleeping, and tigers are masters of hiding into landscaping, but people still love them. Even so, J.J. McCracken had refused to put off the big day. Instead, he'd found a way to turn the construction delay into a moneymaker. J.J. had decided to make an event out of Carnivore Canyon's unveiling, turning it into a second grand opening for Fun Jungle. First, he had the new exhibit heavily advertised, making it sound so amazing that people who had already come to the park were excited to come back. Then, he'd organized a huge gala sneak peek at the exhibit the night before it opened for special members. Special members were primary people who had paid a lot of money for the privilege but a few invitations were randomly awarded to park guests, which kept people coming. The party was 2 nights away, and it was going to be huge with catered food and live music and fireworks. There were even rumors that a few movie stars and professional athletes might be there. I had hoped to go. As Carnivore Canyon had been off limits to everyone during construction, I was dying to see it, but Mom, who was invited, had sadly informed me that the event was for adults only. Until the canyon opened, no cats were on view at the Fun Jungle. The tigers and lions had been in quarantine for weeks, as had the raccoons, otters, and other carnivores that would be on display. Since lions and tigers don't move much, the trick to a good carnivore exhibit is to feature much smaller, more active carnivores. Raccoons and otters might not have much value, but they're fun to watch. The delays had created all sorts of screw-ups for the delivery of many animals. Mom said the jaguars hadn't even arrived yet. So, how had a dead jaguar ended up on Doc's operating room? I pondered this as I wandered through Fun Jungle. I wasn't sure where I was going or what I should do next. I thought about heading to Monkey Mountain to tell Mom all that had happened, that I'd met Summer McCracken and that we'd found the murder weapon together, and then she'd want to know how we'd found the murder weapon. I didn't want to tell her that not only had I decided to investigate Henry's death against her orders, but that I had also broken into Hippo River to do it. She would be livid. Or maybe she wouldn't believe me at all. I didn't even have the murder weapon anymore. She certainly wouldn't buy that Doc had stolen it from me. Even though Doc was a crabby old jerk, Mom still respected him. My cell phone buzzed in my pocket. I fished it out thinking it was probably Mom, but I found a text message instead. It stopped me in my tracks. Meet me at the World of Reptiles, Black Mamba exhibit, 7 p.m., Summer. I was surprised that Summer knew my cell number, but only for a moment. Her father was rich and employed both my parents. It had only taken Summer a few minutes to learn about every prank I'd pulled at Fun Jungle. Getting my phone number would have been easy for her. I was even more surprised by how excited I felt. Suddenly, my heart was beating quickly and my skin tingled. I felt like I'd ridden the motion simulator for the first time. I wanted to believe that this was because Summer had found a new lead in the case to share with me, but when I thought about it, I realized there was something more. I couldn't wait to see her again. I texted back that I'd meet Summer at the Black Mamba exhibit, then found myself watching my phone and waiting for a reply. After 5 minutes, I realized this was stupid. Why would she need to text me when she was going to see me soon? I checked my watch. It was only 5 o'clock. Time instantly slowed to a crawl. 7 seemed an eon away. The seconds ticked by slowly as I bided my time, trying to find things to occupy my attention. I tried to focus on the case instead, but to no avail. I went on Life of a Bee twice, but found even that couldn't distract me. Eventually, the 2 hours passed. 7 was when Fun Jungle closed for the night, although some exhibits shut down even earlier for the sake of the animals. All the guests weren't gone at 7, though. The stores by the front gates had resumed staying open after closing time in order to continue extracting cash from the guests. But there was nothing left to see, and the guests would generally trickle towards the exit. World of Reptiles would be empty, which I figured was exactly why Summer wanted to wait until 7 to meet there. World of Reptiles was probably the most conventional zoo building at Fun Jungle, since there's little way to make reptiles exciting. True, they can do some pretty amazing things, but since they're cold-blooded, they often spend hours, if not days, resting, usually under a rock. Still, Fun Jungle's designers had done what they could do to make the experience fun, which meant, for the most part, trying to distract the guest with things that weren't reptiles. The building itself was very cool and designed around a huge central glass dome so that it looked kind of like a gigantic turtle. Under the dome was an enormous tropical rainforest filled with waterfalls, streams, and towering trees, which were fake but looked real enough. That had an airborne path of rope bridges strung between them. It was like a giant arboreal jungle gym. There were lots of reptiles on display in the atrium, but the designers had included plenty of non-reptiles as well to provide some activity for guests to observe. Parrots, scarlet ibis, small clawed otters, and 2 families of monkeys. An even more blatant distraction was the dinosaurs. They weren't real, obviously. They were robots. I had never been impressed with them. In the first place, they shouldn't have even been in the reptile house, seeing as the dinosaurs weren't reptiles. Science had proven 100 times over that they were warm-blooded ancestors of birds. Second, they didn't do much except act like they were eating and growling on occasion, although there were velociraptors that sprung out of the bushes and occasionally scared little girls. The tourists loved them, though. World of Reptiles designers had shrewdly placed them right before the exhibit, which kept guests moving through the rest of the building in order to see them. To prevent pedestrian traffic jams, the designers didn't even let people walk through the dinosaurs. Instead, they'd installed moving sidewalks to hustle guests through them quickly. The rest of the building had been more traditional displays generally, reptiles in glass cages, although I noticed most of the people tended to ignore them in their haste to get to the rainforest or the dinosaurs. This was a shame, as Fun Jungle's reptile collection was really impressive. There were Galapagos tortoises, a 40-foot anaconda, rare alligator relatives like caimans and gavials, snapping turtles, frilled dragons, basilisks, water monitors, and even a Komodo dragon, the world's largest lizard. Most remarkable of all, however, was the extensive collection of poisonous snakes. Fun Jungle had more poisonous snakes than any other zoo in the world. Cobras, death adders, kraits, asps, coral snakes, cottonmouths, gaboon vipers, copperheads, tapins, bandybands, bushmasters, sidewinders, 24 kinds of rattlesnakes, and a huge aquarium filled with sea snakes, which were fascinating to watch. The final snake on display was the most deadly of all, the black mamba. Mambas aren't the most poisonous snake, sea snakes are, or even the most poisonous on land, that's the tapin. But they're aggressive. Most poisonous snakes prefer to hide from humans, bite only as a last defense. If a mamba feels threatened, it'll come after you, and they are fast. Thus, they've killed more people than any other kind of snake. That sounds horrifying. Blech. It wasn't until I'd got to the mamba exhibit that I realized that it was a strange meeting place for Summer to select. First of all, it was inside World of Reptiles, which was supposed to be locked at night. Luckily, the front door had been propped open with a brick, which I'd assumed meant Summer would already be waiting for me. But when I got to the mamba exhibit, I found myself alone. Another strange thing about the meeting spot was that it wasn't very comfortable. There were plenty of exhibits in the World of Reptile with benches that would have been where we could have sat and talked. The central atrium alone had dozens. Meanwhile, the Black Mamba exhibit sat in the middle of a glorified hallway. Most people raced right past it to get to the dinosaur world of reptiles to the dinosaur. Sorry, most people raced right past it to get to the dinosaurs. World of Reptiles designers had spruced it up a bit, filling the hall with planters full of tropical flowers, but still, it was kind of like inviting someone into your mansion and then asking them to meet you in the cloak closet. I did my best to distract myself while waiting for Summer to show up. I tried to focus on looking for various poisonous snakes in the exhibit rather than my watch every 15 seconds, but I couldn't help myself. Where was Summer? I checked my watch again, thinking it must be 7:15 already, but found only 3 minutes had gone by. That wasn't unreasonable. Summer might have had some trouble ditching her shadows again, or misjudged how far World of Reptiles was from the front gate, or been distracted by something in the atrium. Why had she wanted to meet me here? I wondered again. Was there something important about the mamba? I turned my attention to the exhibit. Even among poisonous snakes, mambas aren't that interesting. They don't have flare hoods like a king cobra, the horns of a rhinoceros viper, the beautiful patterns of a coral snake. They're just black, thin and black, which makes them very hard to find. I've always been good at spotting animals, but the mamba didn't seem to be anywhere in its case. As I leaned against the glass, it shifted slightly. That seemed wrong. I took a step back, and something crunched under my foot. I looked down. The floor was covered with tiny glass shavings. They reminded me of the time in the Congo when Dad had to jury-rig a new window shield for the Land Rover and had cut the glass himself. Cut the glass? I looked back at the exhibit. At the top, there was a 2-inch gap where the glass had been removed. It was above my head, but there were several branches inside the exhibit from which the mamba could have easily accessed the gap, and escaped. 2 heat lamps were on the exhibit, but it was cool out in the hall. The mamba, being cold-blooded, probably wouldn't have gone far after getting out. The floor was black. The walls were black. The nearby planter was black, exactly the same color as a mamba. Now I felt my blood go cold. I looked around wildly, trying to locate the snake. To my dismay, the hall was kept quite dark in order to focus everyone's attention towards the exhibits. There were shadows everywhere. All I could see was blackness. Something hissed behind me. My ears prickled. In all my years in Africa, I'd never run into a poisonous snake, but Mom had given me explicit instructions about what to do if it ever happened. The trick was to make no sudden movements. Even an aggressive snake, like the mamba, wouldn't attack me unless it felt threatened. However, I couldn't stay frozen like a statue for hours either. I had to figure out where the snake was. I twisted my head around as slowly as I could, struggling to keep my arms and legs still. The hissing suddenly came from my right. I leapt, crawled, unable to control myself, and slammed into the glass of the mamba exhibit. I whirled to my right, expecting the sting of fangs in my ankle at any second, and saw the source of the noise. The irrigation system had kicked on for the tropical plants. Tiny sprinkler heads hissed as they sprayed water onto the soil. I immediately felt foolish, but I had no sense of relief. The mamba was still close, and now I had made a sudden movement. Panic surged through me. I imagined the snake closing in from the shadows. I couldn't stay any longer. There was a groan behind me. The glass from the mamba exhibit had popped loose from its mooring on the wall. It toppled. I ran. An adrenaline rush is an incredible thing. I was already 50 yards away by the time the glass shattered on the floor. Definitely a near Olympic time for the distance I had to negotiate corners. I hurtled into the dinosaur exhibit, racing towards the exit, fearing the mama's bite at every step, alert to every movement, every noise. I rounded a stand of fake trees and something lunged at me. I leapt away, screaming, and stumbled over my feet. It was the dang velociraptor. It didn't look anything like a mamba, of course, but I was too freaked out to control my reactions. I lost my balance, tumbled over the railing, and thudded into the Triassic period. The Tyrannosaurus suddenly loomed over me, roaring and gnashing its teeth. I wasn't concerned by it so much as I was the floor around me. There were fake plants everywhere, creating thousands of hiding places. Beneath all of them stretched a dozen electrical cables for the dinosaurs, each thin and black, just like mamba. To my right, only 2 feet away, one of them twitched. I wasn't sure if it was a snake or movement caused by the dinosaur or just my mind playing tricks on me. I was well past the ability to keep my cool. I vaulted back over the railing, hit the ground running, and sprinted through the rest of the building. I slammed through the exit door and didn't stop until I was a good 100 yards away from the world of reptiles. The sun was setting, so it still looked light outside. I could see the ground all around me. There were no black mambas out there. I stood on a picnic table anyhow, just to play it safe. The entire experience had taken a minute, maybe at the most. It took me 5 times as long to get my breath back. And even then, my heart was still pounding in my chest like a jackhammer. The truth now dawned on me. I'd been set up. It was easy to fake a text message. Anyone could have sent it and signed it from Summer. I had no idea what her actual phone number was. I'd simply seen a message from her and assumed it was actually a message from her. That had been foolish, I realized, but I hadn't been thinking right in my excitement to see her again, and frankly, up to that point, I had no reason to believe anyone would want to cause me trouble anyhow. The thoughts flickered through my mind that maybe Summer had set me up, but I shoved that aside. She wouldn't do that. She was nice. She wasn't capable of sending me to my death. I froze at the thought of it. Had someone really tried to kill me? Or were they just trying to scare me off? Either way, they'd sent me on a blind date with a black mamba. No matter what their intention, I could have ended up dead. Certainly one thing was clear. Whoever had killed Henry knew I was looking for them, and they were willing to do anything to keep me from investigating. You'll have to see what happens tomorrow. Thanks for listening.